Hey everyone, Adrian here. And finally, here we have the finished artwork and time-lapse for Nulacav. Like the Vynta collection before, now on Gumroad, there's a set of time-lapses including the main illustration and headshots, plus a little bit more is available for $8. Now, onward to some more questions from you. When drawing for yourself, what subjects do you return to, and why do you think that is? In the past, I would pretty simply say dragons and be done with it. There's a ton of freedom to be had with their designs, and there's basically no actual rule by which to define them. As for more present day, I can say that only partially. Nowadays, I'm branching out towards largely any of my own headworld designs or poking at fan art. While it was basically everything I drew as a little kid, I used to have a huge stigma against fan art that developed in my teen years, where I'd started to pick up on a bit of a perception that putting time in art towards something not entirely original of my own was a waste. Now, being able to look back at those years, I feel that was a big mistake to give into that idea. And I do honestly believe it stunted me in a lot of ways for nearly 8 years, which is a lot of time to lose. Obviously, there's balance to be had in doing some fan art and doing some original works, but there's a huge advantage I've finally discovered in fan art, besides essentially coming with a pre-established fan base of fellow people and artists you might be able to bond with over it, but understanding that a lot of designs for TV, comics, manga, etc. were explicitly made to be easily drawn and understood for the sake of their own medium. Drawing fan art does wonders for imprinting examples in your mind of what elements of a character design actually work well that you can later apply to your own work. I've started allowing it to color a bit more of my approaches to my own designs in the last couple of years, and it's honestly helped me move forward faster. For the next question, it's rather a composite of a few separate ones that touch on the same core thing. Do you draw every day? And if so, how do you keep yourself interested? And how often should you draw, and when should you rest? There's a couple ways to approach the latter parts of those questions, but to answer the first, absolutely yes, I draw every day. I put in an average of 6 to 8 hours daily, give or take a few, since the actual needs of the given day can fluctuate quite a bit. Of course, there's some where I take a lot of steps back and relax more and I may only do a couple hours, but I can say that's about the lowest I ever go. This is mostly because not only is it how I make my income anymore, but art has always been something central to just being, well, me. There was actually another question asking how I got into art, to which I actually don't know how to answer that. Because, yeah, it's been a core element of just who I am for so long, it kind of precedes any particular memories I could drum up. This also almost inherently solves the question of how do I keep myself interested, because it's extremely difficult not to be. But to at least try and give a clearer answer to that one, I focus on things and stylistic elements that I enjoy for the most part. Namely, I strongly prefer a reasonable blend of stylization to absolute realism. The latter is just not fun at all to me, and only really has an interest as far as simply acquiring the technical skill itself. And if I do get involved in some larger project or work, provided it's something I voluntarily chose in the first place, it's mostly about balancing the time spent on the project with sliding stretches of personal work time in small bursts over its course. I've had some who argue there's no difference between personal art and work-specific art, that they're both the same thing, and I think, as many of you can already vouch for, that couldn't be more wrong. Having the right amount of personal work going on at the same time is actually essentially just as important on top of regular breaks in general for revitalizing your enthusiasm and stamina altogether. But besides that, knowing what aspects of art and design you enjoy and what aspects you don't so much enjoy are very important and can't be overlooked. As a creative field, your emotional state has a huge impact on the quality and efficiency of your workflow from a moment-to-moment basis. The more your work is playing to your likes, the more energized, efficient, and often faster you will be. While the more it bends towards facets you're not so fond of, the more you'll be dealing with an inherent internal combat situation, where even though you're determined to get it done, that lessened enthusiasm will slow you down. And yeah, that goes for most anything, but again, while you can, so to speak, zombie your way through something more like physical labor, and do just about the same either way, that loophole of sorts nearly doesn't exist when, short of having a particularly high skill level to mitigate it, your performance in a creative activity is almost completely tied to your mental state at that moment. I mean, think of Vynta. That by itself is a big example. You can notice often when someone's done event art because they are frustrated or something. It shows. For these reasons, especially when someone younger is asking what they should draw, besides telling them that you need to be familiar with fundamentals, focus on drawing something that you like. Obviously stretch the comfort zone regularly to grow, but leverage your enjoyment of a subject to help maintain the enthusiasm needed to go further with it. Lastly, how frequently should you draw and when to rest? That depends on, I think, whether you're a hobbyist or you're trying to be professional. Obviously, the more the better. However, you do need to draw with purpose if you intend to get better. And what I mean is that regardless of whether you're drawing for fun or not, you should be looking to get a little better in something about it pretty much each time. For professionals, I see the average time spent per week to be basically the same as a full-time job and beyond, which is to say 40 to 60 hours a week. Of course, if you have another job or school, or God forbid both, this is pretty much not happening. Especially with school, as everyone knows, school has a complete disregard for what would otherwise be your personal time by its very nature. You'll have to figure it out where you can fit workable time and what you may have to sacrifice to get it. When it comes to taking breaks, I make it a point to take a moment to walk around and stuff for a little while about every hour. Of course, occasionally failing when the flow kicks in and, just sailing right through stuff. But besides that, taking proper breaks to basically the same tune as any regular job. Every 2 hours, take 15 plus minutes away. 4 hours, you're probably due to eat food anyways, and so on. Especially since you're working your arm and wrist in particular, you've got to watch how much pressure and how you're moving and resting them regularly. I honestly wouldn't advocate for going much over 8 hours in a day under regular circumstances, particularly if you do it daily, because that'll eventually make for a huge damage risk to said limbs. I'll talk more specifically about scheduling, organization, and stuff in another video, because that's a topic all by itself. As I think a lot of people forget, especially the more professional you're acting, the more actual business and communication and resource management stuff you have to allocate surprising amounts of time for. I mean, full disclosure, a simple hour or two in a day can be completely lost to just dealing with emails, files, staying up to date on related things just for that day. With that said, if what I said was helpful at all, or you enjoyed this video, give it a like, hit subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit that little notification bell to tell YouTube to give you a heads up when these videos are published. And don't forget to check out my site at Drak-Arts.com or Gumroad if you're interested in time-lapse collections, Photoshop, layered files, and the like. I'll catch y'all next time.